Yeah, it is. It is. I've got it. Right. So here we are for the Bionic Boxing Barber. This is my first interview in London, and how apt it is that I've got Ben Doughty here. Ben, we've known each other for a long, long time in boxing. You're here at the Indigo O2.
Absolutely. Great to see you as well, again, Clint.
You came down to Mevagissey and you surprised me. You were visiting family down there, and we spent Christmas Eve together walking around the harbour. And then I reached out to you with my training last year, and I came up to the gym where you work out of, and you moved me around a little bit. And you know, we've kept our friendship going when we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that is people knock social media frequently and talk about how it's eroded certain things in society, but I think the upside of it is you make connections with like-minded people, and when you meet for the first time, as we did in Christmas 2021, I believe, you don't feel like you're meeting for the first time. You feel like you've actually got quite a lot of history and a lot of familiarity. So, I mean, that's the flip side of social media. That's why I'm on it.
We have a lot of banter on social media, and we're to-ing and fro-ing, and I'll chuck stuff at you, you'll chuck stuff at me. And, you know, I'm new to this game of interviewing, and I wanted to get you here and have a chat to you about the Indigo, because you've actually worked here yourself. The BKB's been here. What have you done here?
I cornered a fighter called Gavin Curragh, who boxed on one of the Jim Freeman Dove shows. And I believe they had one last Sunday here, actually. Jim was promoting at this venue. But yeah, I trained Gavin at the Repton when he was an amateur, obviously. He tried to turn professional and he was dogged from one thing or another. He hasn't got the cleanest legal history, and he's had substance issues and alcohol issues, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying. And it's kind of diverted his path to becoming a professional fighter. I guess he was getting a little bit old for the board to accept him. They knocked him back before because of one thing or another. So he got on the a BKB show where there was an easier entry level, and he got me on board because I trained him, you know, as a boxer. It's different, obviously. Main thing I noticed was different is they can drink the water themselves. They can hold it because they haven't got gloves on, so you don't need to do that. But no, you know what? The big difference I found with a BKB. One punch really can change everything. They say it can in boxing, and that's true. But it's very true when it can just cause a big injury. All of a sudden, one sharp blow to the eye or something can be a fight-changing thing. You know, can shut somebody's eye a lot quicker than a glove fist can. Gavin's a pretty good boxer, you know, stand-up boxer. So he hurt a guy pretty early, and he had the guy down 5 times. And what I noticed, you'd never have seen him go down 5 times in a boxing context. He'd have been counted out, but they got a 20-second count in this stuff. And the 20-second count makes a coward out of anybody. You could hit someone with a poleaxing shot and they could look like they've been shot by a sniper. But after you've been down about 12, 13, 14 seconds, you start thinking, I better get up, you know, because they keep counting, you know. So that's one thing I noticed. But yeah, so luckily I wasn't really needed too much because I only gave him advice for one of the rounds and only stopped him in a second.
I cornered a friend of mine, Lenny Butlin, for the first time in Swindon the other day, and you know, it's a tick on my bucket list. I'd never cornered anybody before. Luckily, I'd got a lady up from London, Carly, and she jumped in and she took over a little bit. Yeah. She got right into him and sorted him out and lifted him. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Corner work. I remember Iceman John Scully, who's you know, obviously one of our stateside Facebook boxing brethren. World-class fighter himself, world-class trainer. He's involved most recently with Artur Beterbiev. And he was talking about fight night, and he said, on fight night, you don't need a good trainer, you need a good cornerman. And those two are not necessarily mutually exclusive, and they're not the same. Ideally, you want both, you know, because you want that process in the gym, and, you know, when you're getting ready in camp, as they say. But he's right insofar as, you know, whatever you might be a good teacher in the gym, you might be a wonderful teacher in the gym and a good conditioner or whatever, but there is an art to being a corner man, or let's say a corner person, given the, I just mentioned a lady helped you out, where you obviously learn it with experience, but there's only certain things you can tell somebody, especially a novice, or even an experienced fighter, there are only certain things you can tell them in what really amounts to about 50 seconds you've got to talk to them by the time they walked to and from, you know. And you can't tell them too much, and you need to understand that fighter's psychology. Some people respond well to negativity. I worked with the great Tony Burns at Repton for a few years, and Tony's whole kind of default strategy, it seemed to me, was negativity. Like, what's the matter with you? You're useless. You're afraid of him. What you holding him for? Do you want to go on a date with him? What's the fucking matter with you? All that. That works good for some people. Of course it does. You know, they get some fired up, get some annoyed. You know. But some fighters it doesn't work well for, and it can ruin a fighter's confidence. So sometimes you might tell a fighter he's winning when he isn't. Same way as you might tell a fighter he's losing when he's actually winning, because it depends on the psychology of that fighter and what you're trying to achieve. That's corner work.
Absolutely. I learnt a lot that night, and I would jump back in and I'd know what I'm doing a little bit more from that experience.
Yeah.
Back to the BKB, the bare knuckle. It's being took really serious now, and it's on some of the more the bigger platforms on TV. I think they've signed a contract now with Paramount or something, or they're going with somebody. And, it could take off like a UFC type platform. We're finding now that a lot of the fighters that are getting into it, they've been really good boxers. They've been very good standard. They're not the lads that have got bad records. They've got disillusioned with the sport that we love and gone to bare knuckle and signed contracts and getting money out of it.
I think that's true. The other thing I've noticed is that some of these lads are arguably a little bit past their sell-by date in boxing. Absolutely. But there's still a platform for them here, because it's not just about money. Fighters live to fight, don't they? The vast majority of them. That's the kind of they are a special breed, and when it's all over, it's well documented. A lot of fighters have problems readjusting to society and being a regular Joe, because they're not regular Joes, and that's not the way they've been reared. It's not the way they've lived. And a lot of them, whether they can make money on a circuit like the BKB, on a promotion like the BKB, it's about feeling fulfilled, and obviously they like the adrenaline, the roar of the crowd, all the rest of it. So I've noticed a few who have not got too many opportunities left in boxing, but they still get opportunities here. And I think stand-up boxers, guys who are well schooled in punching and moving in and out, they do well at this kind of stuff anyway, because in the UFC sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't, because there's the other aspects. But this BKB is basically about hitting and not being hit, the same as boxing, right? Yeah.
I'm also finding that there's a handful of guys going over to the States doing bare knuckle. And I've looked on social media just recently, and there's a few guys out there fighting this weekend, and they've got British accents straight away, and they're out there earning money. Not a lot of them can get a pass to go out to the States. So if they've got, if they're clean and they can travel and they can fight, America's taking them.
Yeah, no doubt there is a big scene there. I remember, because I remember years ago. Do you remember a guy called Bobby Gunn who got blown away by Enzo Macronelli?
Yes, I do. In
the early part of this century now? For Enzo's WBO cruiserweight title, and but he was the world bare knuckle boxing champion for a while. I know that was his big kind of claim to fame, Bobby Gunn. And it's funny, sometimes you see these guys who get knocked out in a couple of rounds and at a world class level in boxing, who have this big eminence in this other scene. So no, it's surprising in a way, isn't it, when we're getting supposedly more of a kind of nanny culture. And there's less things you're allowed to do. Health and safety seems to be everywhere in life these days, and there's less things you can get away with. Think of the things you used to do back in the day. Even I remember Jimmy Tibbs in his autobiography talking about working on sites with no hard hats and no safety checks, and they just got on with it. Whereas it's quite odd in a way, in the middle of all that culture in the 21st century, in the 2020s, even when people are talking about even gender is being ludicrously blurred. It's quite strange that something as primal as bare knuckle boxing is flourishing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I've noticed as well a lot of guys that have gone out of the boxing and then tried to pick their careers up, have left it too long, and they've gone back into the bare knuckle. They've struggled with perhaps being on the wrong side of the law and end up in prison.
Yeah,
absolutely. And also they've they're not been able to get the career going again, but they've got great skills and they can be really good at bare knuckle. And it's not something that I really like to see, to be honest with you. They get absolutely smashed to bloody bits. I'm not a massive lover of it, but I do watch it.
I've got to be honest with you, I feel the same. I mean, they do seem to ship an awful lot of damage. When I say I've been to a couple of shows. I came once to watch and once to work Gavin's Corner, and when you're backstage and you see these guys leave looking resplendent and pristine to go out of a fight, and then you see them come back whether they won or lost, and it looks like a horror film. So they do seem to take a lot of damage. Whether I wouldn't criticise it, particularly not when I don't have a massive amount of knowledge about the scene and I've only been to a couple of shows.
Yeah.
I do have concerns about the amount of facial damage they seem to pick up. Whether it's mostly, you see Nathan De Castro.
De Castro, yeah.
And he's a classic example of a guy who should have gone places more than he did in boxing, but he had problems, he had issues, I think he failed a brain scan due to some abnormality with the border control, British boxing border control. He did box on unaffiliated promotions. I commentated on one of his pro fights at the York Hall, which was promoted under a German sanction. Then he found his way into this, and for someone who's just a fighter through and through like Nathan is, that's what it's all about, the manliness of it, that, you know, the primal nature of it. You know, Tyler Goodjohn was another one who got a lot of trajectory in this scene. And I think I get the fact that they want to fight, and it makes them
You mentioned Nathan De Castro. What a character. You know, if you're watching now, Nathan, all the best to you. I hope you get back in the ring and you're successful. I think he lost last time out. But, you know, like you say, he posted a lot of stuff on social media afterwards, and he was smashed to bloody bits. And the national press picked up on it.
Did they? Did they take that kind of spin on it? Like, this cannot be permitted and this is out of order, or what?
Well, he'd got a smile on his face, and he wasn't looking too good. But in his the picture went all over the place. But he's a great character, and you should follow him. What a boy!
No, he's a good lad, like I say, you know. And who are we to say that he shouldn't be doing that? I'm sure he's heard it all before when people are saying, "Oh, you know, you shouldn't be getting lumps knocked out of yourself in that fashion." But I think the BKB. And no doubt it's a spin-off of the culture we live in today and the social media and everything else. The fact we're here today and we're able to put this stuff out to a platform, that has opened things up. Things were very, very narrow back in the day. Even when Frank Warren came into boxing, you know, he was on the unlicensed scene himself, getting quite a lot of trajectory with his unlicensed, so-called unlicensed shows with the National Boxing Council, to the point where the British Boxing Board of Control offered him to come in with them because they'd rather have him, I believe the adage is, inside pissing out of the tent rather than the other way around, you know. And that is why these things are possible. In the old days, boxers, when they were finished in boxing, and there was only a couple of promoters around back in the day, when there were no opportunities left for them, they were finished and they were consigned to the dustbin, the scrap heap. Whereas now, there's something they can do here, they can earn some money, and they can get that buzz, you know.
Yeah.